super pumped to be here with you all. My home on the internet, if anybody wants to follow up with me after this, it's caniretireyet.com. If you want to find me there and reach out. And I love to connect with people more and follow up after this. And as he mentioned, I also wrote the Choose FI book with Brad and Jonathan. So that's how you probably, if you know me, that's probably how, one of those two ways. But how I still identify, when 2014, when I found FIRE, I started writing the blog Eat the Financial Elephant. And what that alluded to was this whole idea of just being totally overwhelmed by this personal finance. I knew nothing. It was just like my way of kind of learning by making myself learn at a deeper level by sharing with other people, and also paying forward all of the people, the Mr. Money Mustaches and the Mad Scientists and the J.L. Collins and my eventual future blog partner, Darrow, who I could never pay back, so I was looking to pay it forward and help a new group of people that, and by spreading this message. When I wrote the Choose FI book, I found a lot of blogs and just personal finance in general. It's very like guru driven and like, this is what I did, do it my way. And so what I wanted to do with the book is just take a lot of common principles that cross these different stories and these different methods. And I found I was super excited with the way it came out, and we got a lot of acclaim and a lot of good feedback, so I was super happy with that. And then my other idea with the book, they used to ask 5 like rapid fire questions at the end of every episode, and there was absolutely like nothing. I don't think there was 2 answers that were the same on any of the questions. Like it was all noise except for one. And on over half of the episodes, they asked like, what was your favorite blog post? And if you have not been able to guess yet, it was Pete's shockingly simple math of early retirement. And I absolutely related with that because that blog post changed my life too. Because it just kind of was like this light bulb that went on in my head, and the stuff that was like overwhelming up until that point, all of a sudden it just made sense. And so I'm assuming most of you know what that is, but just a quick recap. What that does, it forces us to focus on our spending rather than our income, which is what a lot of people, they say, like, you know, you need to take whatever you make and you're gonna have to replace 80 or 90% of that when you retire. And he just kind of blew that up and said, like, you get to determine what you want your life to look like. It doesn't matter what you made. Like if you were a teacher making $40,000 or a physician making $400,000, you don't automatically need 10 times more because you're a physician. You get to choose what your life looks like and go with that. The other thing it did, like when I was working with a financial advisor who was using that income replacement rule, it was just this vague, nebulous thing in the future, and I had no idea, like we didn't have a target or a goal. And all of a sudden we had this concrete goal, which we were already saving, but it inspired other action, and for people that aren't saving, I think it inspires that action. So it's super important in that respect. And then the other thing, it makes us ask more and better questions. One thing is just how much are we spending? Like, and then once you do that, like where is that money actually going? And is that in alignment with what we say we want? And for most people, I think it's not until you start becoming intentional. So that blog post is super important and impactful. And for, again, just a little bit more about it. So it took this seemingly complex question and you just boiled it down to 3 variables. What's your annual spending? What's the safe withdrawal rate? And then how much do you need to be financially independent? And so it's just simple, again, like it says, simple math. So if you know any 2, you can solve for a third. So if you have your FI number and you know the safe withdrawal rate, then that gives you how much you can spend each year. Or if you're gonna shuffle the numbers around, most of us are trying to figure out, can I retire yet? Or am I financially independent? So your FI number is just your annual spend divided by the safe withdrawal rate. So if we track our spending and we know the safe withdrawal rate, then just simple math, we can figure that out. So say you're spending $50,000, safe withdrawal rate is 4%, you know you need $1.25 million, simple, you're done. But I think we have to ask ourselves, is the safe withdrawal rate, is that the real challenge when we're figuring out, like, how do we plan out? I mean, some of you maybe are catching up and looking at a 30-year retirement. Some of us are looking at 40, 50, 60 years. And are we gonna be that same person in the future? Because when we're looking at the traditional math behind the simple math, basically, they're just saying you're gonna spend the same thing every year from whenever you pull the trigger until whenever you die, and you adjust for inflation, but otherwise everything just kind of stays the same. And I think that we need to really look a little bit deeper into that. And so like we talked about the simple math, and we make it an algebra equation where we just solve for X. And what I'm gonna kind of challenge you all to do is to make it more personal. So instead of making that an X, just think of it like you're solving for I or me or we or you or however you're looking at the problem. But I think that's a pretty powerful reminder that we need to personalize this. And we really got to think about what do we want. And we talk a lot in this community about, money is a really powerful tool. And we talk about all the things that it enables us to do. But if you don't have enough, it also can limit what you can do with your life. And so you have to kind of think like, what are you going to look like way in the future? And that's a really hard question. So I kind of asked that question, who am I? And that is me at 2. I am now 46, so 44 years later. And when I punch my numbers into a calculator, I always put at least 90. So that's another 44 years. And so if you look at that dude and me, there's not a whole lot in common. People that know me well probably will say that's the last time I've ever had a tool in my hand and tried to do anything useful. But that was me. And so I have to kind of think, if I'm that different from that kid, what am I going to be like in 44 years? Am I going to be anything really like I am now, or is it going to be that much different? And I kind of started thinking about what determines who you are, what is constant? Like if you're saying, who am I? Like over time, your DNA stays the same, your social security number stays the same, you have the same birth date and eye color and sex, but none of that tells you absolutely anything. Like if you look at your driver's license, it has your weight, your hair color, if you have hair at all, your dress, your age, none of that defines you. All that stuff changes. Like a lot of times you go to a party, people say what do you do? Or who are you? Or tell me about yourself. And people lead with I'm a physical therapist, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, I'm a whatever. Your relationships, your hobbies, again, none of that really defines you. All these things change over time. None of this is constant. So I started reading about this concept of life's 2 halves. And it's this concept that basically we live 2 very different lives. And it's almost we're different people at different stages of life. And there's different people who have different perspectives, but kind of common across all of them is that in the first half of life, we're really just dedicated to figuring out who we are and kind of separating from our parents and becoming self-sustaining. And a lot of it's driven by our ego, by just this desire to have status, to have power, and just to start accumulating possessions and just things. And then the second half of life is really spent in search of deeper meaning. And common themes are relationships, being of service to others, what is your purpose in life? Who are you? And I think it's characterized by words like maturity and wisdom. And a couple things to kind of emphasize as we start to talk about these things is that transition doesn't really occur at a particular point. So it's not like if the lifespan is 82, you live 41 years as a first half of life person, and then you blow out your birthday candles and you're this new person. But it can happen at any time. And so some people, we go through things maybe you lose a parent, maybe you are diagnosed with a serious disease, maybe something else. For me, I think it was having a child. It really changed me. And so things mature you and it changes who you are. And then it's kind of important to understand too, not everybody progresses to that second half of life. I think we can look at politics, we can look at popular culture, and there's certainly people that never have enough, and they never, whether that's enough money, enough power, enough status, enough fame, and they're always pushing for more, and they never really progress to this second half. But I kind of thought this applied a lot when I thought of conversations I've had in this community, and when I kind of thought of my own life, I kind of envision this community as kind of second half of life people. The cool thing about kind of considering life in 2 halves is it really emphasizes just what he talked about a little bit, which is we change. We're not the same person throughout our life. And who we are today may not be who we'll be in the future. And if I was going to rewrite that slide, I would say, shouldn't probably be who we are in the future. I hope we're all growing and getting better and changing over time, and we're not that same person we were when we were 20 years old. Our desires and needs are almost guaranteed to be different, and understanding that should impact our planning process. Now, the downside when we start looking at trying to marry this 2 halves of life approach with planning for financial independence and what you're going to do after retirement is the changes don't necessarily reflect your financial status. So we talked about sometimes you start to just change who you are when you discover financial independence because you're looking for something different, you're looking for something deeper, you want to escape the normal rat race life that most people live, but you're a long way from financial independence. So it's not like you can just live a different life yet because you still have to figure out how to make ends meet and to get through the rest of your life. And again, there's also, I think, I talk to a lot of people who say whether it's something as simple as I'm going to start exercising, or I'm going to be a better parent or a better partner or whatever, and they think you're going to become magically this different person once you achieve financial independence. And I would really challenge you to question that if that's the thoughts that are kind of floating around in your head, because I don't think that happens. And again, there's some people that have vast wealth and they never really are willing to do that deeper inner work that's required to progress to that more maturity in that second half of life. And so as I kind of pondered this stuff, I started just saying, aren't we always changing? And I think at some level we are. Our habits, our hobbies, our interests, our knowledge. And I think sometimes we finally, like, when we find this FI movement and we start thinking more deeply, and we think like we have it figured out, and maybe you do for this phase in your life, but our health isn't guaranteed. Relationships change, even if you are happy, maybe the people around you are gonna change and move on. None of us are getting younger, we're all getting older. The places we live change, the laws that govern us change, and economic environments change. So if you kind of just think you can just plan this thing and life's gonna work out smooth, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And so I kind of started the talk by challenging you to really kind of get personal and not solve for X, but solve for me or we, or again, however you wanna look at it. So I'm gonna just share a little bit about my life and how I changed to kind of kick that off and challenge you. So like when I think about where I was, I would kind of characterize this phase of my life from probably like when I was in 10th grade until I can tell you exactly when I changed again. It was the end of my freshman year in college, and I just call it young and dumb. And I think we've all kind of been there at some degree, but the crowd I was with, it was not great. And when I think of like what did I value back then and kind of compare where I'm at now, there was genuinely nothing really good. And when I think about why I was able to successfully move on to the next stage of life, I think part of it, I had awesome parents who like never quit on me. I was always pretty just naturally good at sports and at school, and it probably prevented me from sliding too far in the wrong direction. And if I'm being really honest, probably the privilege played into it. If I didn't look the way I looked, maybe I would have had a little bit bigger of a target on my back. And whether you want to use like terms like luck or grace or however you look at the world, but like in a lot of ways, like I had my best friend in high school. I remember getting a call from my mom, and he smashed his car, wrapped it around a tree, driving drunk, and fractured his neck, and he was in a halo for a year, and we weren't sure if he was going to live. And had some other people who had some close calls. I had a friend overdose. We were going down the wrong path. And so in retrospect, as I look back at that phase of my life, I'm definitely glad I didn't trap myself, and for whatever reason, and I had the freedom and flexibility to learn and evolve and grow and become a different person. The next phase of my life, I call this kind of growing up as I think about it. And I really think, when I think back, like we did everything right by like the way you're like supposed to do, like go to school, work hard, do everything. And I worked really hard. I got my bachelor's and my master's degree. I got my first real job. We worked really hard, my wife and I, to become debt-free before we got married. We bought our first house. Like I said, we did get married. And we started doing some of the stuff that we weren't able to do when we didn't have the money when we were younger. So we were starting to live a little bit better. And again, I can tell you when this phase ended was probably about 2 years after I got my physical therapy degree. And I was doing my job and it was okay. And my wife was working, she had a professional job and it was okay. And it was a Sunday and we sat down and we were like, what are we gonna do today? What are we gonna do? And like we realized like our pool was like overrun with algae. I didn't mow the grass yet for like 2 weeks. We had to grocery shop, we had to clean the house, and like we had 1 day a week off because we were working 6 days a week. We were working so hard, and it's like, this is what we worked so hard for. Like this is it. And so, literally started looking for new jobs that day. We bought a house and we put it up for sale within 2 years, which is, if you're looking for financial advice, don't do that. Yeah. But yeah, we just we started over. We decided this is not what we wanted for the rest of our life. And why we were able to successfully move on. In this phase, I do think I can take some credit for just hard work. We did have a plan, like as far as getting out of debt, and we executed on it. And we avoided a lot of mistakes that a lot of our peers made. Like almost every single person I graduated college with, the first thing they did was went and got a new car with a loan. They bought the most house they could afford. So even though we sold our house and it was not a great deal, we at least were able to move on, and we didn't cripple ourselves. And again, so you might start noticing a theme here, but in retrospect, I'm really glad that we didn't trap ourselves and we had that flexibility to grow and become a new person. The next phase, and this was like from my mid-20s to my mid-30s, and I kind of coined this term being like dirtbag millionaires. And a dirtbag, for people that aren't aware, haven't heard of, they think it's a derogatory thing. In the climbing community, it's like a badge of honor. Like you're the people that like, you just kind of are willing to go all out to live the life that you want to live. And you don't need a lot of money and you don't care. And like, I think Mark talked a lot about being like a ski bum. That's kind of the winter version. So we really, we really embraced that idea, which was adventure, which was traveling, which was experiencing life fully. But we still lived way below our means. We still didn't drive the nice car. We didn't upgrade our house. And we were really good with risk management. We were getting out doing these things that are perceived as dangerous, But other than, like, we had one really close call with rock fall out in the mountains. But other than that, I mean, neither of us even had an injury or anything. So again, why we were successfully able to move on is, again, we just didn't trap ourselves. And we gave ourselves that ability to have flexibility and freedom to evolve and learn and grow. And we were very happy in that stage. We didn't have a grand plan by any means. Like, we didn't know FIRE was a thing. But I'm very grateful we were able to move on because, surprise, after over 10 years of being married, we found out we were having a baby. And I love this picture because I'm pretty certain underneath there she was like, and like that was like to our plans of, like we were at that point, we had no idea of FIRE. We had no idea how much we needed to be secure, but we were just figured, like, I'm a mature, responsible adult. My wife's a mature, responsible adult. Like, if something happens to one of us, the other one will get by. And we were just going to kind of wing it. That was our plan. We were going to move west. She had a job in the outdoor industry, and I was just going to kind of maybe do some part-time work and figure it out and basically live that ski bum lifestyle with a little bit of financial security. And all of a sudden, we realized, like, we had to become grown-ups. And so what was important to me in this phase of life is parenthood, just learning how to take care of another life, and financial literacy. And this topic that I paid absolutely no attention to. We hired a financial advisor for our investing, and we found him I asked my parents what they did because I thought they were doing okay. And that was literally, that one question was the end of my due diligence. And whatever he told me to do for 10 years, we did. And that turned out being compounded out at least conservatively $1 million mistake. So yeah, so there was some bitterness and some anger in there. But as I went through what I valued, I wanted to create security. I wanted to figure out money and how to take control. And how could we incorporate our daughter into this life that we kind of dreamed of? Because at first, I think we were kind of on that path that, like, kids cost a lot of money. You got to save for college. You got to do this. And, like, we have to kind of live that standard life that we were really trying to avoid and we were really trying to get out of. And that's when I found the FIRE movement. And again, that kind of just gave me hope that, yeah, maybe we can do something different because we saw these other people who were doing different things. And why we were able to successfully get beyond this phase, despite the big mistakes we had. And again, I kind of touched on this when I introduced myself the other night, but I think if you get the big things right, and you get enough of those and you do them for long enough, you're still going to be okay. So we were in a very strong position. We had a paid off house. We were nowhere close to 5, but we had like a 6-figure portfolio at this point. So it's not like we were starting in the hole and trying to figure it out from square one. We had all the habits in place. We just needed to figure out the technical stuff and figure out the finance. And so again, I'm very grateful for that because if we would have been stuck there for 15 or 20 years while she was growing up, and we wouldn't have had the life that I have right now. So now we were kind of, at this point, we hit close enough to financial independence that I was comfortable leaving my job, and we moved west and we decided to start over. And so when I thought about, like, what I valued, what did I want my life to look like at this point of, leaving my job and kind of being maybe not financially independent, but financially independent enough. I wanted to get to know my daughter and spend the next 15 years with her while I had that opportunity and not look back and wish I did. And so that was my number one thing. We just found, like, we were so busy with work to begin with, and then with having a kid, it was just hard to maintain any contact and meaningful relationships with outside of work and our immediate family. So to build friendships and to strengthen relationships in my life. Again, I was a physical therapist, and I sometimes feel guilty, like, saying I wanted to get out of the workforce because I grew up in an area where, like, it was a steel mill and a coal mining town, and people struggled, and, like, my job wasn't hard, and I was paid relatively well, and I had 4 weeks of vacation, but it just wasn't in alignment with where I wanted to be spending 50 hours of my week between commuting and having to be there at lunch and meetings and paperwork and all that stuff. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. And I wanted to explore different paths, and so that meant, leaving my job, leaving my career behind, and also moving to a new location where, we could have access to the things that I wanted to do on a day-to-day basis. And again, why was I successfully able to transition to this phase? The FIRE principles that I spent so much time on in that prior phase really let me take control of my money and have confidence that we were going to be okay, and we were going to not risk my daughter's future to seek this crazy lifestyle that we had no idea what we were doing. And I was willing to think outside the box. I think a lot of times people get trapped because, like, do I have enough? And maybe if I one more year. And my decision was not we hit a number, we're going to leave. My decision was, my daughter's starting kindergarten. If we don't do this now, it's going to be really hard. So it was a lifestyle decision, and we went for it, and we kind of figured out how to make it work. And so where do we go from here? Beyond financial independence, 5 years ago, I achieved a level that let me walk away from a fairly lucrative career and a secure and safe career. And 5 years later, my life is different than what I anticipated 5 years ago. I have no idea what's going to look like in another 5 years, let alone 25 or 45 years into the future. And I'd say some days that's scary, but most days it's liberating. And I value it, and I've never had regrets. And I've never thought about going back to the way it was. To kind of help you guys to wrap up, what are some dominant themes? The first thing, I think everybody should kind of put a lot of thought into this. But when you're thinking about where you want to spend your money, I never, ever in my life regretted putting time and money into relationships. A close second is experiences, particularly when they involve deepening those relationships. And things, which is where I think most people spend most of their money, are just such a distant third. And that's something that I think you should consider. That is one constant that's been consistent across time. I challenge all of you to kind of finish this sentence. I feel most fulfilled when, and again, like I kind of tried to think, not just right now, but across time. I like doing hard things. I like building things. We've climbed high, we've done high altitude mountaineering. I've got way more education than I probably need, but I'm going back to school again. Like I just like doing hard things. I like challenging myself. I love being outside. That's just my happy place. That's like, again, I'm not like a religious person, but like that's just where I feel like something bigger than me. With people I love, and kind of expanding that meaning and expanding that circle of people, and in service to others. Again, I don't think it was a mistake that my original career was in a field where helping people every day. And as I look at things across time, that's something that's important to me, is being able to serve and help other people. And if you're not tired of hearing this yet, I'm going to say it one more time, because I think people tend to get a little bit myopic. And I think it's very important that you don't trap yourself, and you want to give yourself that freedom and flexibility, because we're always changing and growing across time, and that doesn't change. And so, like a lot of us, I've heard a lot of conversations. I had people want to talk about their numbers. Am I financially independent? Can I retire yet? Can I leave? Can I do something different? And I think some better questions, and this is where I'm going to end and hopefully kick the conversation over to you guys. But I think better questions, number one, how do you define retirement? And is that what you really want? I think most of us think of retirement as like, we're never going to work again. I'm going to draw down my investments. And is that a good thing? Like, why do we ever do that? Like, if you look at the origin of retirement, it started because they had to retire people because they had to get younger, more productive people into the workforce. And it's just something we've all adopted, and I don't know, a lot of people question that. So is that really the end goal? What's it mean to be financially independent, and can that really be achieved? Like, you might be able to, if you live this lifestyle, if your spending was constant, if past assumptions are correct, you're financially independent. But what if you decide you want to move somewhere because any number of reasons? What if you have a health thing? What if something happens if you're a parent to your child? Is there any amount of money you wouldn't spend? So are you really financially independent? And I think you need to think about that. What do I really want out of life? And are financial independence and retirement, is that necessary to live that life? And if not, how can you start using the financial resources you have right now to start living more in alignment with your goals? And finally, how can I live my best life now without limiting future versions of myself, because you won't be the same person in the future? And that's it.